It's important to realize that with water losses, the first few hours after water intrusion determines the amount of damage. The quicker you can start to mitigate, stop it, get rid of the water, it saves you damage, it saves money on the back end.
Welcome to Connected FM, a podcast connecting you to the latest insights, tools, and resources to help you succeed in facility management. This podcast is brought to you by IFMA, the leading professional association for facility managers. If you're ready to grow your network and advance in your career, go to ifma.org to get started. In today's episode, Stephanie Skordas from Legend Brands discusses the critical importance of in-house emergency water response capabilities for facility managers. She's joined by her colleagues and industry experts Mike Redd and Michael Hawes as they delve into the significant benefits, common challenges, and essential equipment needed to effectively manage water damage events in your facility. They share their extensive experience and provide actionable insights and advice on building a robust response plan, selecting the right equipment, and training your team. Now, let's get into it.
Every day, facilities face the threat of water damage events, whether it's large-scale weather emergencies, flooding from frozen water pipe, sink overflows, or human error. You probably experienced a time where you had water in your facility in places where it shouldn't be. Chances are you've called a contractor to help you with those water damage events, which affects your budget, maybe even your insurance deductible. I'm Stephanie Skordas with Legend Brands, and your facility may be able to fully handle those emergencies in-house or start the process of extracting water while waiting for your contractor to respond. I'm joined by my colleagues Mike Redd and Michael Hawes. Mike Redd, can you briefly introduce yourself and tell me about your background in facilities management and emergency response protocols?
Stephanie and Michael, thank you very much. So I've coached, supported, trained, and worked alongside facilities managers on water and fire losses for roughly 15 years. I started my journey with Legend Brands about 10 years ago. And then recently, I was watching a podcast, or not a podcast, but a part of IFMA Seattle panel discussion about a month ago. That's my local chapter, so shout out to them. But on that panel, they talked about the importance of having a construction background, how helpful it is for facilities. And so I started out my career in construction. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Michael Hawes, same question to you.
Certainly. I'm currently a member of the Legend Brands R2R assessment team. Prior to that, I spent over a decade in facility management. I had the opportunity to manage everything from custodial and landscaping to maintenance and construction, safety, health, and compliance, working in local government, federal government, retail, and higher education spaces. I'm excited to now be on the side of helping and teaching others how to respond to these water events.
Wonderful. All right, so Mike Redd, let me get started with you. So what are the benefits to facility managers and organizations for bringing emergency water response capabilities in-house?
That's a great question to start. So let me share the experience of a hospital system in Canada. Year after year, they had ongoing issues with bursting frozen pipes due to a combination of very old buildings and very cold winters. They were constantly filing insurance claims and calling in water restoration contractors. Eventually, this had gone on for so long that the deductibles kept going up, the costs kept going up, and then the insurance carrier actually finally said, no more, we're canceling your water damage policy, we're sorry. Then things got really expensive for the hospital. They were paying for everything themselves. So to try and control costs, they decided to form an in-house water damage response team. And so they got a bunch of resources together. They provided the training for themselves, and then they successfully implemented and got this program up and running. And then after about a year of doing it, they looked back to see what they discovered, how things might have been different. And this is what they found. First, they experienced a roughly 40% savings over what they were paying before. Then also they realized that they're reoccupying their spaces twice as fast. So the surgical suites, the patient rooms, they were getting them the work done faster and turning them around so they could be occupied. And then they were able to respond quicker than when they were calling in outside contractors, minutes rather than hours in some cases. And it's important to realize that with water losses, the first few hours after water intrusion determines the amount of damage. The quicker you can start to mitigate, stop it, get rid of the water, it saves you damage, it saves money on the back end. And so the quick response time helped them prevent secondary damage such as mold. It saved structural materials and it stopped the water from spreading. And finally, because they were doing the work in house, the hospital protocols for health and safety were more strictly adhered to because it was their employees and they provided their training. So, really, the benefits that organizations have from bringing this kind of work in house, it's first, provide you options. Do you call a contractor? Or is it something you can handle themselves? Or is it part of it that we can handle ourselves in house? And second, it'll save money over what their current annual spend is. And then third, it gives you the option to complete the work easier, faster, and often safer.
Awesome. All right. So, Michael Haas, what are some common scenarios facility managers should be prepared for? I know you've seen a lot in your career.
So I would generally try to categorize the things you're looking for in three general topics. The first being weather related. Are you in a region where you need to worry about frozen pipes bursting, flooding the building? Or are you on the side of the spectrum where you're worried more about the humidity outside or tropical rainstorms just adding moisture to your environment, where an open door, an open window suddenly becomes a catastrophe? The second, we look at infrastructure. Do you have an aging building? Are you seeing problems with overflowing sinks or plumbing fixtures? Are you seeing failures of drinking fountain, things of that nature? And then finally, the human-related errors. Are your staff starting sinks, filling up mop buckets, and walking away? Are students in your hallways disrupting the fire sprinkler heads in the ceiling? And once you get an idea of what your customers are presenting to you, what the environment is presenting to you, you start to get an idea of what you need to be prepared for.
Okay. Follow-up question to you. What are the first steps facilities should take to develop and hone a response plan?
Sure. I think the first thing is identify what historically have been your problems and what are the problems that you believe to be coming down in the future. From there, you can get an idea of what scope you need to be prepared to handle. Some facilities are lucky in that their events are limited to generally 10 or 15 square feet from a frozen drain line on an AC unit. Some units are dealing with much larger cleanup. And so once you've identified, you start to look at the scope of what you can do and then start to see your response capability with your staff. Is this something where you have one person you're deploying? Is it something where you could have a team of 5 or 6? And that'll inform the next decisions for equipment, for training, and your response plan.
Interesting. So what are some of the common challenges or obstacles that you see facilities facing when they're building a response program, and how can they overcome them?
Certainly. The first thing that we often see is quite common. Facilities are responding to water events as a custodial issue. They're sending custodial personnel and custodial equipment to try to do something that's outside the realm of what they normally do. We often have great custodial teams out there with great training, but the tools are designed to pick up the amount of water that they're putting down. If you're grabbing shop vacs, if you're grabbing carpet cleaners, the first real step to solve that is to get the tools that are the correct ones for the job. Once you have something that can properly extract large quantities of water, you can pick up that wet water while it's on the ground before it's saturated your building materials. Once it has saturated the building materials, you could trust your internal BAS system and HVAC controls. You could put out some small box fans, or you could go the route of putting in the commercial grade equipment that your contractor is going to bring out when you call them and be able to handle that in. Beyond the equipment being in place, really having a plan for your staff to know what to do. We all on our teams have that person who always gets the call when something goes wrong, and making sure that Ron or David knows exactly what to do. Having that plan written down so that when they're on vacation, someone else can step in and fill in to make sure that we're not creating more hassle for us on the back end.
Yeah, really great ideas. So Mike Brad, what are some resources and equipment that facility managers should consider having on site to support those response efforts that we're talking about?
So let's start with the equipment. You should consider having professional grade flood extractors, air movers, dehumidifiers, portable air scrubbers, and moisture detection instruments specifically designed to handle water damage events. Flood extractors, we'll start with those. They physically remove the standing water. Now, extraction is 500 times more effective than just letting standing water evaporate on its own. Then using fans or air movers, you blow across wet surfaces with those, and then it creates air movement, and the air movement draws out the water moisture through evaporation into the air. And then once that evaporated moisture is airborne, then dehumidifiers capture that moisture, pump it out a hose, and then goes down the drain. And then you use air scrubbers to control the indoor air quality while doing the work because you're going to be kicking up lots of dust and debris while you're doing this work and you're blowing across surfaces. So it really is a protection for the occupants, the workers, to control that, to control the air as well. And then finally, you would use moisture detection equipment to scientifically determine, how wet dry surfaces are, how much moisture is in the air. It's important to use that type of equipment to detect it rather than just taking your hand and sticking it at the wall and going, oh, that feels wet or that feels dry. And also realize there's a big difference between what you can buy at a big box retailer and the commercial equipment available from your favorite MRO distributor. Here's one example. So I work with a facility toward the end of COVID, back when occupants were coming back in the structure, and they wanted to really provide a safe, breathing environment for everyone. So they wanted to improve the air quality. So they went out and they purchased the cheapest, least expensive possible air purifiers from a local store that they could find. And then they brought these units back in, they set them up in the office building, turned them on, and then started checking the air quality a couple of days later and found that it actually got worse. These cheap off-brand air movers were filtering very little. So basically all they were doing was just blowing air off the floor up into the air. So it's real important that you use equipment that's tested, designed to do the job at hand. So a couple of suggestions on how to determine what kind of equipment you should be using. First suggestion is talk to your local water restoration contractors about the equipment they're using. Then consult with your MRO distributor on what they recommend. I just mentioned talking to contractors. Another resource that you should have is have a valued partner, a contractor that you know and trust. One that you can call in when you have a large scale loss, one that you can call and ask for advice or help. That's what they're there for. And then something that Mike mentioned, or Michael, I want to go a little more detail on it is, all our facilities that have this go-to person that just knows the procedures when a loss happens. I'm going to call her Donna. Something happens. There's a pipe break, water's flowing. Oh, let's go call Donna. Donna knows. Oh, shoot, Donna's off today. What do we do now? She's on vacation, right? So you need to take whoever the Donna is in your facility and harness that knowledge and that training that they have and write it down, incorporate that into your standard operating procedures. Then when a loss occurs, the team knows. They go running. They're not going to say, where's Donna? They're going to go running and go, okay, where's our procedures? Let's open the book and find out what we do, where the water shutoffs are. Do we call the fire department to let them know? Where's the fans that we have?
Yeah. Excellent point. You want to get that institutional knowledge out of somebody's head and get it down on paper so it can be shared around. So let me ask you this
so
follow-up
important.
question. What references or other resources are available that facility managers can access for help in assessing and developing their in-house capabilities?
Are you ready to elevate your career to new heights? Join us this October at IFMA's World Workplace Conference and Expo in San Antonio, Texas. Enjoy 3 action-packed days of inspiring keynotes, educational sessions, and networking with leading industry experts. Discover cutting-edge technologies and innovative strategies that will revolutionize your organization's productivity. Don't miss this opportunity to transform your career and shape the future of work. Register today at worldworkplace.ifma.org.
Well, to state the obvious, IFMA offers fantastic professional training resources. Those that are watching this, obviously, you know about them already. Then I would consider 2 U.S. government websites, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention CDC site and the Environmental Protection Agency EPA site. Both offer fantastic resources and helpful information for water damage, including safety guidelines. So it's as simple as going on and just Googling CDC water damage, and then the little AI algorithm kicks in and it pulls up really good information that talks about the steps involved with water damage, the safety precautions, and gives you some other valuable resources. And then another valuable resource is the IICRC. That stands for the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification. And it's an international standards body that came up with guidelines, regulations, and training that all the reputable restoration companies nationwide and worldwide they use. And I can help any of us on this call can help connect you with those type of resources as well. Another resource to look at is your own facility's, history of water damage event. How were they handled previously? What were the results? Who was involved? And that's just another valuable resource that you can have as well.
Wonderful. Great answers. All right, Michael Hawes, I'm coming over to you now. So what is the most critical message or takeaway that you would like facility managers to remember when it comes to bringing emergency water response in-house?
I think the most important thing to remember and to take away from this is that whether you are on day one of this journey to bring water response in-house, or whether you're a seasoned veteran who's been refining and improving your process for a decade, there's going to come a time when there's too much water for you to handle in-house. And we need to be prepared to make that call. As a facility manager, I would challenge you to go out and figure out what is within scope for your team today. Is it 2 rooms? Is it 300 square feet? Whatever the metric is, if you know what it is and what your team can take care of, then when you exceed that limit, you can get help coming as soon as possible. The ultimate goal to save money, to save time, is to keep this in-house. But at the end of the day, we need to keep our customers and our facilities safe. And sometimes that means making the call. So make sure you know where that line is drawn.
Good answer. Mike Red, same to you. What is the most critical message or takeaway?
First, I just want to thank the IFMA audience watching this or listening to this. Thank you. Setting aside time to educate yourselves says a lot about you and your commitment to your work and furthering your FM craft. I want you to know that bringing emergency water response in-house is easier than you might actually think. With training and practice and the commitment at all levels of your organization, you can make it happen. I'll give you an example. My daughter is attending college right now. She's home for the summer. But back in September, she's living on campus at a dorm. She called me in the middle of the night because water losses, for some reason, always happen in the middle of the night. So she called me in the middle of the night in a panic because water was pouring in under the door to her dorm room. And she's like, "Dad, what do I do? Who do I call?" So I gave her some quick tips on things she can do to start to mitigate that loss. I had her call the facilities manager to see how they could respond quickly. And bless their hearts, the school did send over a worker with a mop and a box fan. Now, this was on carpet, by the way. And so my daughter is painfully watching this poor gentleman with a mop trying to control the water. And actually, my daughter's the one that said, "Hey, let's cut off the source first." And by the way, it took over an hour for that one worker to arrive. And actually, my daughter did a lot of coaching to help that situation and help make that loss not as severe as it could have been. So based on that experience, I started a conversation with the school. I went in there and helped them develop an SOP. I trained the staff, provided them equipment and tool recommendations. And it was not a hard process for them to implement some of the stuff, but through their dedication, their time, and the effort the school put forth, it allowed them to be better prepared for future type water losses. Feel free to use me as a resource, connect with me through LinkedIn, and ask me questions anytime. I'm here to help. Thank you.
Wonderful. That's a good point. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and that little bit of education can make a big difference. Mike Red, Michael Hawes, wonderful talking to you today. Thank you so much for your time, and appreciate all the tips you've shared with us for facility managers about bringing their emergency water response in-house.
Thank you, Stephanie. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. And as always, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast for more incredible content.